Yeah, that's it. So, on.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of the Internet Citadel Show. We are so glad that you made it, that you're taking the time out of your evening. Thank you so much for doing that. We have a fantastic guest on tonight. We can't wait to introduce you to him. But before we do, as we always do, I would like to first introduce my wonderful business partner, friend, and co-creator of this show and co-host of this show, Kathy Stover. Her credentials are incredible. We'll go through them somewhat rapidly so we can get to our guest and get past my introductions. If I steal a lot of time now, she can't see much from me. That's good. Kathy has been an operations and sales manager for over 25 years with a Fortune 500 company. Now, that by itself is impressive enough to me just to say, will you be my business partner? But it gets better. She's also got network marketing experience dating back to the mid-'80s. In fact, that's how we met, was during an event at a network marketing event. And we won't go into that on this show, but that's where we met. She's also got, and this is her true strength, affiliate marketing dating back to the early 90s. And I always say this, she can sell nearly anything to nearly anyone on the internet. And I don't exaggerate when I say that. She is that good. She has since developed quite a few other talents. And real quickly, she is right now a highly successful social media coach. If you need any help in social media, this is the person you want to contact. Kathy has taken several of her clients from near unknowns to now we have one of her clients is appearing on stages across America and getting calls all the time for interviews, due in large part, most part, to Kathy's work. So if you're looking for social media expertise, Kathy Stover is the person you want to get in contact with. We are also speakers now. We can say that together. So she is a speaker on stage, and along with myself, we spoke on stage, and it was a lot of fun. And we're going to do a lot of that coming up in the coming months. She's also very good at that, very in her element on stage in front of crowds. It's wonderful having her as a business partner. I got to tell you that. She's also a power seller on eBay. She has her certificate on her wall. Not an easy accreditation to acquire. Because you have to sell a number of goods on eBay, but not just sell, you have to do it with quality and integrity. And on that note, she's also a top-rated seller on eBay, which in my estimation is even more difficult to acquire because the folks that purchase from her are the ones who rate her. So there's no company is rating her. It's the actual individuals that did business with her, rated her so highly and so often that eBay sent her a certificate for that as well. With that, I would like to introduce my wonderful friend and business partner, Kathy Stover. How are you doing tonight, Kathy?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thank you so much. Talk about a mouthful. Good grief. I hope nobody fell asleep during that.
No way.
I am so excited to be here this week, and I'm so excited about our guest tonight. But before we get to him, real quick, I just want to tell everybody who has not met Brian Kelly. Brian, as you know, is co-host, co-creator of what is becoming Celebrity Creators from Internet Citadel. We're very excited about that. Brian has over 23 years of software experience. He's a software engineer, also owned a travel-based MLM for 6.5 years. He also mentioned that he is a speaker. He is fabulous. We're looking forward to going out there and talking in a town near you very soon. Brian put together the technology that we call the Celebrity Creators. Love masterminding and brainstorming with him all of the time. I don't want to take any more time just to say he's a man of character and integrity. I'm very thankful to call him my friend and my business partner. And with that, Brian, I'm going to turn it back over to you so that we can talk to our special guest tonight. I'm so excited.
Yes, this is what it's all about, folks. This show is not about Kathy Stover and Brian Kelly or Brian Kelly and Kathy Stover. This is about our expert guests and panelists that come on this show. We have learned an absolute multitude of invaluable pieces of information, tidbits, business strategies, what have you. And tonight will be no different. And what I'm going to do is take a moment and just read through some of this gentleman's bio, if you will, to give you an idea of where this gentleman comes from. Dr. Jim Manganiello is an award-winning clinical psychologist, mind-body scientist, teacher, author, and mentor. That's enough right there. But he's a longtime innovator in the areas of therapy, personal growth, well-being, and inner fitness. That's a term we'll be hitting on a little bit tonight. That's very intriguing. Dr. Jim works with next step entrepreneurs who want to develop the inner fitness needed to create and grow a business that not only creates significant business success, but that also fuels their own profound personal growth, their development, as well as their ability to be of service to others. I like that aspect a lot. An important part of Dr. Jim's life work aims to put powerful knowledge into actionable forms and then make it available to entrepreneurs who want the powerful benefits of having their business fuel and feed their personal growth, and their personal growth fuel and feed their business. Interesting. Jim works with clients locally in person and worldwide by phone. His work also focuses on deep personal growth for individuals and couples on the relief of stress hormone-driven problems, including anxiety, panic, and depression. He earned his doctorate at Boston University, where he was directly admitted to doctoral candidacy under a full fellowship awarded on the basis of outstanding promise for professional excellence. My goodness, talk about impressive. With that, I would like to introduce to everyone our wonderful guest, Dr. Jim Manganiello. I'm going to get that right every time tonight. Jim, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Brian. Good job on my name. I appreciate it. Good to see you both. Good to be with you both.
Yes, we're so excited. We had the opportunity to spend a bit of time with you a few weeks ago, all from the benefit of our dear friend and connection with Spike Humor, who actually connected the three of us together. So we just want to give a shout out to Spike, because you are a phenomenal...
Yay, Spike.
Yes, Spike.
Yes, you're just a phenomenal individual, and he stated that very well. So we were excited to meet you, and have so glad that we've had the opportunity to speak with you a couple of times now. And finally, we have you on. Oh, yay, everything kind of came together and worked. So how are you doing this evening, Jim?
I'm doing real well. Thanks, Kathy. How are you folks doing?
Fantastic now.
Awesome.
The show is on.
Awesome. Well, Jim, I'd like to start with the fact that your view is the role of entrepreneurs, your view in the role of entrepreneurs is evolving, from what we had talked about recently, and evolving from someone with a vision to take risks, to start a business on their own, to make money, into someone with a vision to take risks to start business, to not only make money, but to also be of service to others and to experience the profound personal growth needed to craft their life into a work of art that can be well lived, loved, and understood. Tell us more. I know that whole paragraph there, Jim, really resonates strongly with Brian and I.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm seeing more and more. It used to be that entrepreneurs were championed for their ability to tolerate high amounts of risk to start a business in order to generate capital, and doing so was something that was greatly applauded. Today, I think more and more people, particularly more and more people with talent, are realizing that's not enough. As a matter of fact, I think we talked about the shadow side of old school entrepreneurship being almost somebody is driven to succeed because of what we could almost call the demons that were chasing them from behind. That is, there's a certain sense that if I make enough money, if I develop a successful business, then I will remedy whatever felt insufficiencies I have, whatever inadequacies I fear that I have. And that's begun to be a real tired story for folks. It's a bit like getting captivated by a mirage. You slave day and night. in order to achieve a certain amount of success, assuming that once you get there, there's going to be all these wonderful benefits, and in truth, there aren't. People suffer in the same old way. They just do so in more expensive cars and homes. So what I call the next step entrepreneur is somebody who is wanting to dive a little deeper into life and who is moved from the inside out to not only create a business, but to create a business that can also become a path of deep personal growth that affords them the opportunity to challenge themselves in ways that they can realize some of their deepest potential. And while doing so, they can actually make a contribution to others. They can be of service to other people. So other people are no longer just seen as opportunities for profit, but they're opportunities for a certain kind of deeply felt satisfaction of being an instrument of changing people's lives for the better.
Fantastic. Jim, I'm curious, what is actually driving this evolution, so to speak?
That's a fascinating question, and there are times when I've been talking with some evolutionary scientists, and I've almost had the feeling that it's evolution itself. When you think about it for a moment, we operate on such a narrow band of reality. We lose sight of the enormity of what is going on that's called life on this planet. If you think about it for a moment, our planet, the planet Earth, rotates 1,000 miles per hour. It revolves around the sun at 76,000 miles per hour. Our solar system is moving about the galaxy at 760,000 miles per hour. And what do we listen to every day? What do we hear every day? What version of reality is being promulgated? So I think that the species itself is waking up to the need for it to steward its own evolution, that we can't just remain passive as if we're on a bus with someone else driving. Increasingly, we've got to realize that we have to take care of this planet. We have to take care of one another. We have to begin to aspire to some deeper and higher things than just looking pretty and preparing for retirement.
Well, so what is the difference between mind-side fitness and inner fitness? How do you differentiate that, or is it one and the same?
Well, they're connected, they're interdependent, but think of it this way. Mind-side fitness is a prerequisite for what I would call inner fitness. And when inner fitness, in a nutshell, the deepest view of inner fitness we could say is as follows: that we somehow develop the ability to break free from this surface identity that represents our conditioning, and we dive much deeper into who we really are. The fact is, Kathy, that we're trapped inside of an identity that's basically a conditioned self-image that has resulted from our experience in our particular family and in our particular culture. And this conditioned self-image is a little bit like a spider's web that keeps us stuck in an identity that's far too small for who we deeply are. So inner fitness is something that I equate with relocating from this superficial identity to this much deeper heart-based identity. Now, in order for that to happen, we have to cultivate mind-side fitness. Now, what is mind-side fitness? Think about it for a moment. We go to our health club, and what do? We work out with our bodies. We make our, hopefully, we're increasing our endurance, we're increasing our muscle strength and muscle size in some instances, but no one relates to the mind side. And, if you go to a health club or you go to an alternative medicine practice, they use the word mind-body, they bandy it about without any real understanding of what it is, and it's really like mind-body light. So here's the deal. We have a mind that is as capable as our body of becoming strong, resilient, and flexible. Most of us are unaware of the fact that we are basically functioning at a very low level of mind-side fitness. For example, we're at the mercy of what we think and feel, typically. Our thoughts and feelings define our reality. So what does it look like for somebody to be a mind-side fit? Well, they cultivate quality of mindfulness, the ability to be present. What's the difference between somebody who's mind-side fit and somebody who's not? Well, think of it this way. You know how if you've ever visited a train station, trains keep pulling in, and people are careful. They look at the train at the little sign to make sure that it's going where they want to go, and only then do they get on. The fact is that most of us get on whatever train of thought is pulling into the station of our minds. Excuse me. Pardon me. So when we become mind-side fit, we become mindful enough, we become present enough to realize that some flows of thought are not worthy of getting on. They're not worthy of riding into an experience of reality or an experience of emotion that's not necessarily in our best interest and that keeps us stuck at the surface of things.
Well, as entrepreneurs, how do we know which ones to let in and which ones to pass and go? I mean, how do you decipher?
It's a good point, and that's the bottom line. First, you have to realize that there's a difference. It's pretty tricky. Most of us have what I would call a mental infection big time, and because we all have it, we don't think it's especially strange. It tends to pass for reality. That is, we're all preoccupied sometimes with things that if you step back are quite crazy. People, again, spend so much time and energy preparing to retire, they spend no time at all preparing to die. So it's a matter of tuning oneself to one's inner voice, of being able to have the perspective and the sense of proportion, that there are deeper values that one needs to connect to. And until you know that a fact is a fact, it doesn't become very compelling. For example, if the three of us lived in an area where we were living in homes where there was no heat, there was no running water, there was no plumbing, we wouldn't think that was strange at all.
Right.
Because we wouldn't realize that anybody's living any differently. But if we went for a walk or we suddenly got dropped into a kind of upscale suburb in Los Angeles or Boston or New York, we would find a breathtaking shock that there are these people with running water, with heat, with swimming pools, with 5,000-foot square homes, so on and so forth. Well, similarly, we have to become awakened to a much deeper possibility. And I'd like to, if I could, demonstrate that by telling you a story that I learned that I found was very, very moving for me. The indigenous South African tradition, when a woman intends to conceive a child, she goes to the ocean and she listens very carefully for the sound of that child's soul in the distance.
Wow.
And she tunes herself very, very carefully so that she can begin to hear the sound of that child's soul. And when she does, she begins to pick up a melody. It's the signature, if you will. It's the absolute thumbprint of that very unique nature of that soul. And when she gets the melody down sufficiently, she returns home to her spouse, her partner, and they make love, both of them, humming this melody, calling forth the child's soul. And after she conceives, she continues, and he does as well, to sing to this child while she or he is in the womb. And when the child is born, they sing this song again and again until the child picks up on it and can sing it to herself or himself. And it becomes the signature of, again, the deepest, most essential part of who she is or who he is. Now, bottom line, that's all she'll ever need. That's all he'll ever need. There's really nothing more that one could have than to be in the deepest connection with who one truly is. So a next step entrepreneur is somebody that has a mission. The mission is to make a connection with that deeper experience of identity and then to begin to create from there. Create what? Well, create a business that's based on what she or he truly wants and truly loves. One cannot discover that from the surface. One is just at the mercy of whatever propaganda is floating around in the culture. Once one discovers what they truly want and love, then they have an opportunity to connect with their destiny. Now, to build a business based on that, there's not a great deal that could possibly be more fulfilling with respect to possibilities of generating significant revenue, having great fun, doing something that provides you with an opportunity to find that spark in your heart and to set your life on fire with it, and then to render deep and meaningful service that changes the lives of other people for the better. So that's where I'm seeing more and more people developing a serious appetite.
Excellent.
Well, so as entrepreneurs, if we kind of pick up that song or that music that's going to imprint what it is that we're doing as entrepreneurs, then it's going to totally change how we flow through and connect and develop our business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like a minefield out there. No disrespect meant for this, because what we tend to do is, if we're not reasonably self-aware, we tend to tremendously underestimate the amount of work that's required to really dive deep and connect within ourselves. As a matter of fact, most of the stuff that passes for personal growth today is just a recipe for waxing a dirty floor. It sounds great. It's like great pictures of food. They look great. You can even salivate looking at them. But if you chew on paper long enough, you realize there's no nutrition involved in that. So it's not a matter of knowing what the secret it is. It's not the matter of setting things up so that you're in the flow of the law of attraction. It's not a matter of thinking positively and coming into optimism. It's a matter of rolling up your sleeves and actually knowing what to do. And it's not always a very comfortable affair at the outset. One has to do a significant amount of work to break free from this surface identity. And let me tell you, the propaganda that goes on to try and dissuade one from that is just amazing. And it's echoed in the culture at large. You rarely can find anything going on in the larger culture that tends to reinforce this preoccupation. But most people feel it as a longing in their soul, this inexplicable hunger for something. It comes into our lives as a distinct feeling that something is wrong. But typically, being the self-abusers we are, we always assume that what's wrong is us, that we're not doing it right, that we don't look right, we don't act right, we don't have enough money, we don't know what to do, we're not like this one or that one. That's a terrible wrong turn. To honor that sense of discomfort and to commit oneself to doing something about it is just a profound opportunity.
Now, Dr. Jim, we've gone over a term called inner fitness several times already on this show. Can you tell us some things that inner fitness will do for the entrepreneur, and I love how you put this, who want their business to fuel and feed their personal growth, and their personal growth to fuel and feed their business?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian, and I want to backtrack a little bit to what I was saying. It's if we can accept that we have to dive deep and connect with our what I would call our essential core and break free from this surface identity with all of its preoccupations. And by the way, when I say break free, I don't mean like throw it at the side of the road and all of a sudden we become this new and improved Jim or new and improved Brian or new and improved Kathy, but we develop a sophisticated understanding that we're not just one center of gravity. It's almost as if we have to become the CEOs of our personality. There are certain phone calls that you just don't take. There are certain strategies that you just don't pursue. There are certain voices that you just don't listen to, that you set your sights on the strategy that you're compelled to follow, and you develop a very precise set of tactics that will get you there, and then you remain committed to them without forgetting what's going on. Now, in order to do that, we have to develop a center of gravity that's awake and aware. We have to develop a center of gravity that I would call that has a capacity to host negative states of mind rather than become possessed or swept out to sea by them. Am I making sense to you? You know what I'm talking about. If you spend enough time with yourself, you'll discover some very valuable things that aren't too pretty, but they're valuable nevertheless. And if you can connect to the awareness that becomes aware of them, there's tremendous possibilities. That is, we're chronically caught up and lost in kind of repetitive thought flow. If you watch yourself and you observe yourself, you'll notice that pretty much every day the weather conditions are the same preoccupations surface, the same memories flash in. It's very difficult to penetrate beyond those and move into a deeper center of gravity. What I tried to say earlier is that once we do connect with what I would call that, we can almost refer to it as a stress-free state. It's a state of clarity, of awareness, of self-assurance. Then we can connect with what we really want in love. And again, we don't necessarily create our destiny, we connect to it. It's something that lies within us, but we have to cultivate this inner fitness, or else we're just kidding ourselves.
Well, I think that probably all of us would agree. We don't spend time doing any of that, Jim. As you know, when we get involved in our businesses, we're just kind of going and going and going. And so we don't take the time to experience that or feel that or get to that level to know what it is that we need to be focusing on. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, I mean, you've hit the principal problem.
Yeah. So it's, is this something that, becomes part of our daily schedule and on the list of priorities, and that becomes at the top or somewhere in the middle, or just it needs to be done sometime during our days?
One of the things that I've done with my work after spending 30 plus years in contemplative meditative traditions, they're wonderful sources of knowledge and understanding to cultivate inner fitness. The problem is, however, they were best suited with respect to their form and their style for a time that's long gone and for another culture. And when these traditions come into this culture, they tend to be like transplanted shrubs. They do great for a year, and then they start to get bizarre. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the meditative traditions that have come from east to west. They tend to have a nasty period of development here. So one of the things that I've done is that I've tried to create methods, inner fitness methods, that are very powerfully developed in order to trigger the kinds of experiences we're talking about, so that somebody can first discover this depth within themselves, then they can actually strengthen their connection to it and stabilize their connection to it and begin to operate from it and live from it. I'm anticipating, and I don't think this is overly optimistic. I wish I could share with you some of the folks that I've been working with and that I'm just deeply moved by their aspirations. I think we're in a period of tremendous revolution. Think about it for a moment. The Renaissance was a period like this. If you take a look at your universities, they've become garment industries in disguise. There are some arguments from social philosophers that there's very little learning going on there, really, really profoundly deep learning, that there's a business going on there. I got a letter from my alma mater not long ago. They wanted me to make a donation so they could create a wing in Dubai. I mean, give me a break, will you? Kids are paying $50,000 for a year in school. So you take a look at physicians today, who many of them are dearly, dearly noble people who've worked and struggled hard, and they've been marginalized by the pharmaceutical industry. But that the model of the teacher, the model of the professor, the model of the physician is beginning to become a tad obsolete. I think the next step all over the place is going to have some entrepreneurial energy. Now, somebody asked me the other day, well, what the hell are you talking about? What is a next step entrepreneur going to do? Well, at the top of the list might be things like take over the funeral homes in this country. Think about it. One of the most sacred experiences anybody has is death. One of the most difficult, profoundly moving experiences that a family could have is going through the experience of death or watching one of their loved ones go. And who do we leave it to? The people at Jiffy Lube. The people who are running these funeral homes very often have absolutely no experience with death, no experience with dealing with families. Similarly, few people know this, but do you have any idea what the third leading cause of death is in America?
I'm not quite sure.
Brian?
I'm thinking. I can't think of one.
Physicians in hospitals.
Oh.
See, I was thinking of a disease.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
physicians in hospitals, and we now know, for example, that one of the primary sources of illness, as well as anxiety, panic, and depression, are an abundance of stress hormones that are in the body. And I think that that's something that your listening audience might want to understand a little bit more. The point I'm trying to make is, look, when you pull the curtain back, you're seeing a lot of things that no longer make sense. There's tremendous opportunity for entrepreneurs to think creatively about making tremendous impact of actually moving this species forward a notch, helping tremendous numbers of people, and generating very powerful revenue in doing so. But they have to align their intent. They have to align their intent with something greater than wanting to compensate for their felt insufficiencies and wanting to just accumulate a whole bunch of money as if it's going to mean something.
Interesting.
Well, so what knowledge and tools does an entrepreneur need to cultivate and maintain inner fitness?
Well, it's very helpful, as you might imagine, to know the difference between when you're dreaming and when you're awake.
Yes.
And it's a good analogy. If you know how in the middle of the night, if you're having a dream and some crocodile is chasing you up the stairs and you're completely freaked out in cold sweat terror running away,
Yes.
if you wake up, right, as uncomfortable as that moment might be, you're not looking under your bed for a crocodile anymore, are you? Why? Well, you've woken up into a higher level of understanding, right?
Right.
You're now awake. Well, there's another step to awakening. And part of the methods that I was talking about that I've developed and that I train a number of entrepreneurs with is the ability to locate oneself in daily life to see whether you're caught in this surface flow of thought that is basically driving you into waking dreams. Now, I'm sure both of you know enough entrepreneurs to understand that many of them are driven by fear and anxiety.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And we're talking about a next step entrepreneur that instead of being driven from behind by fear and anxiety is going to be pulled ahead by their dreams and visions. And in order to do that, you have to be awake. So you've heard of the word mindfulness?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and you've got a sense of what that is? Some ability to be aware and present so that you don't fall into waking dreams, into these preoccupations that represent the concerns of your surface identity. Let me say it another way. There are three things that tend to happen, the steps that go in cultivating inner fitness. We could say the first one is we must realize that it's very important for us to learn everything about ourselves that we don't want to know.
Okay.
Okay?
That sounds
Now,
like it would be kind of difficult.
I'm sorry, Brian, I missed that.
That sounds like that would be a difficult process from more than one vantage point.
In what sense? Say something about that.
Well, no one wants to go look at their, the negative side of themselves, number one. And number two, to truly find that, you actually need somebody else, I would think, to help you pull out what those things are. And neither of those sound to me as though they would be very fun, for
Well,
lack of a better word.
and this is the dilemma. Think of it this way. That, and I think we mentioned this when we talked at first. That for 20 years after World War II, there were Japanese soldiers hiding in the jungle in fear that the Americans were coming. Now, their every day was taken up, serious amount of time and energy and effort was in protecting themselves against the Americans. Well, typically, we're like that Japanese soldier. That is, the preoccupations of our defensive system are for problems that are long gone, that are really in past times. So, you remember the stories about the old gold diggers, or the folks that would go from east to west in order to pan for gold or to stake a claim? They knew what gold smelled like. That's why they were willing. That's why they were willing to climb up in those mountains and dig in that ground and look for that gold. Similarly, if I know what the prize is, if I become aware, and if you help me see that, I'm going to get what I would call a software upgrade, which for the Japanese soldier would mean he would actually get to look at the newspaper that says the war is over and begin to head for higher ground. And
Right?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's the reward for going through that process.
That is correct. And the reward is not only a conceptual reward, but there's something in our heart that says yes. Did you ever see the movie on, how the CNN can't help but show you more horrible things every night? The more horrible, the better. Well, there's this picture that comes up frequently that somebody is lost at sea in stormy weather, and the helicopter goes over them, and they're waving like this, over here, and the helicopter flies over them. And you can imagine what that feels like if you're in that water, right? Well, there's something deep in our soul, truly, truly, truly for real. There's something, we didn't come here to mess around, or, we came here for a real adventure, and we're kind of lost in the surface of things. There's something in our soul that's just like that person lost at sea. And it's our job to recognize them like the helicopter pilot, and then to allow them to do what's necessary. So the first thing is you learn what you don't want to know about yourself. You learn what your preoccupations are, your limitations are, your fears are. Is there a problem, Bri?
Everything's fine.
Okay. You learn what they are, and then you cultivate the art and science of developing degrees of freedom from them. So, for example, if I understand that, whenever I'm going to give a talk, I get real afraid that I'm going to sound stupid and weird and ridiculous, and that people are going to find me unacceptable or uninspiring. Well, all of a sudden, I've got a part of my mind that sees that.
Right.
That I don't take that story seriously. That, like the crocodile chasing up the stairs, this is the same thing. This is the waking dream. The crocodile is now in my mind. It's saying, oh, I can't give this talk. I can't do that work. I can't be a speaker. All of a sudden, I realize I wake up to another level and I say, I got a part of my mind that's pretty afraid of giving a talk. And I can begin to administer support to that part of my mind, rather than accepting it as a literally true storyline. Now, the more I practice that, right? Like the first time I gave a talk I was a university professor for 9 years. The first talk I gave, I wouldn't let go of the podium. Even if I could, I don't know that I could. I would have known how. The first lecture I gave was to 600 people.
Wow.
And it took some time and some practice, and then all of a sudden I began to inhabit the role. It was very real, yada, yada, yada. Well, there's so much that we can do along those lines. So the next step entrepreneur begins to pick up the scent like a bloodhound would of what she or he needs to do and know about themselves. So the minute, as I begin to dismantle this pattern, this program, this conditioning, right? As I begin to become an astute observer of the baggage I'm carrying, as I begin to break free from it, well, guess what happens? The sun begins to rise. And that son is who I really, truly am. There becomes enough work. I've done enough infrastructure work where I can stabilize the vision of that deeper person who I truly am. And it's like a coming home to myself. It's a very emotionally moving experience.
Wow. Goodness. Okay, you've there's so much information. I don't even know where to go from here. It's this is very, very deep stuff, but it all makes sense. And we've had this talk before, Jim, on the phone, you, I, and Kathy together, where we really connected and we could understand a lot of what you were saying and really connect with everything you're saying. But to bring it down into, I guess, I don't know, layman's terms, for lack of a better word, how do you actually give entrepreneurs this knowledge, these tools, and the blueprint for this revolution project? You know, how do you mentor? How do you train them? How do you guide them when you actually take on a client to do this?
Well, one of the things that I do is that, it certainly depends on who they are and where they are and what their most pressing needs are. Some folks come to me and their vision is fairly refined. And while they may not have connected the dots in the way that I'm talking about, they're very, very ripe to do so. So one of the things that I do is, and again, depending upon where they are, is I put some knowledge and tools in their hands. It is like a map, if you will, for how to do this work, and for how to experience the terrain that's associated with this work. The first thing I do, almost for everyone, is to introduce them to the stress-free state. Now, this has a double bonus. Not only does it prepare an entrepreneur for this path that we're talking about, but it also has a tremendously powerful effect on two things: health, well-being, and quality of life. That's even independent from this next step entrepreneur's ultimate vision. They're in some circles we could say, don't tell anybody I ever said this, but you have to be a little mad to want to be a next step entrepreneur. You have to be willing to take the brakes off a little bit, and you have to be willing to dive very deep. And in order to do that, you've got to develop what I would call equanimity, some sense of generosity and friendship with yourself, and some real peace of mind. You have to be able to find that peace of mind. So that, for example, Brian, before you knew Kathy, you wouldn't have known where to find her. You wouldn't have even known she existed. Once you met her, you made a little communication with her. You got to know where she lived and what her phone number was. When you needed or wanted her, you could call her. Similarly, I'm talking about one of the most important things I do with people is to introduce them to this very, very peaceful, calm, self-assured state of mind that is in truth their real nature, and then help them cultivate the stability of connection to it that they can resort to it when they need. Then it's no longer believing what I'm saying. It's like they're connected with something that gives them the possibility of living a higher order life and responding rather than reacting. I'm making sense to you, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go to that place, to be honest. I'm ready.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And the whole idea of less stress and peacefulness and connecting with your inner self to find what you're talking about just seems so relaxing and nice. So imagine that we spent some time following two entrepreneurs, one who developed inner fitness and the other one who didn't. How would their lives look different? How would they be different?
That's a great
Well,
one.
I love the question, and it gives me an opportunity to, if I may, note another one of my favorite ideas, which is to remember the mustard. You've gone to the store, the shopping supermarket for mustard and come home. You got 2-3 bags of groceries. You put it down on the kitchen table. You take everything out of the bags, and you realize, my God, there's no mustard.
Yes.
You forgot the mustard. You got distracted. You still have groceries there. You made the trip to the grocery market, but you didn't come back with what you went for. Well, we came here for an adventure of depth and meaning. We didn't come here, to just to make money, to find a parking lot for our lives, and to keep our fingers crossed when it was time to die. Unfortunately, most of us are like folks that have arrived and we never get 50 yards from our parachute. So the old line entrepreneur, what he or she would look like, let's imagine they were successful even.
Okay.
And they came into untold riches and they're very wealthy and they've got a company and everything is fine with respect to their finances, but there's not the kind of dismantling of their surface identity. And so they continue to live at the surface. They're preoccupied with things, money, homes, and it's all great. But like I said earlier, after a while, the glow begins to drop off of that. And we just wind up suffering in more expensive homes and being confused in more expensive cars, so on and so forth. Whereas the next step entrepreneur, I would think, would be someone who is remembering the mustard. They came they developed a plan. They felt that it was their destiny. They placed their bets on what they truly loved and wanted, not just on what they thought would make money, not just on what, and their passion was involved. So, and they've made a very significant amount of money, but that money is enabling their deepest possibilities. That money is enabling something incredibly deep within themselves, such that, I mean, this may be a great leap here, but they're in a position to die at peace. And there are those, if you've been a student of the authentic spiritual traditions, they all say one thing in common about dying for the most part, which is that if you have crystallized your intent and your love, and you've combined that with what you could call your destiny, then your passage from this experience into the next will align precisely with what you've created here. Whereas if that's not the case, you've got a considerable amount of confusion. Most people say in this age of where science dictates everything, for the most part, either we've got hard science, well, if you can't see it, it's not real, or we've got a lot of woo-woo over on the side. Well, whether you believe that the Pacific Ocean exists or not, once you head west and you get beyond California, you're going to know what's happening.
That's right.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, we've touched on stress several times. You have and put us in that nice, calm, relaxed state. Kathy and I were both going there in our minds as you were talking, thinking, "Oh, I want to go there." But when it comes to entrepreneurs, is it the same for them? I mean, is stress a big problem for entrepreneurs and their families, or are they somehow different?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurs and their families actually are at the mercy of more stress than most people in general, because, and I'll tell you exactly why. Let me note to you, one of the things I do is I put some tools and resources in people's hands. For example, I've got a really awesome product that I put together with practices in it, many of which you could not find in the West. And the first one, all you need to do is lay down, follow the instructions on the audio, and you will drop into this stress-free state. And why many entrepreneurs find it so valuable is it does two things. One, it lowers their stress hormone levels, and two, it flushes these stress hormones out of their system. Now, let me give you the brief stress story in a nutshell. We're not wired for this time and place. We're actually hardwired for a time that's long gone. The evolutionary scientists call this the great mismatch. So that today, actually, we've had 400 years of change in social change in the last 50 years. And we live lives that are very fast-paced, very complex. If you're not multitasking 3 hours a day, you're probably 2 days behind. We also live in insane times. Again, just sit back. It's like, sit back and listen to CNN with your third ear. And listen to the kind of stories that are coming out where there are so many mind infections and lunacy going on. So what an entrepreneur's hard wiring does, unfortunately, at times, because they're involved in the fray, There's an awful lot to do.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot at stake. There's an awful lot of risk going on. Unfortunately, this hard wiring mistakes an entrepreneur's life for sometimes for life-threatening danger, and this fight or flight response triggers. And you can see it in some entrepreneurs. They're like they're loaded for bear. I mean, they're wired, and this is a cardinal sign of the stress hormones are just flying through their system. So, for example, if the three of us, if this were 20,000 years ago and we were doing this television interview 20,000 years ago and a saber-toothed tiger came upon us, we wouldn't say, oh, gee, Brian, Kathy, I think we ought to do something. We would immediately go through the release of these stress hormones, and this would reroute our blood from our core, from the ordinary housekeeping chore function in our body, and put the blood into our arms and legs so we could fight like hell or run like hell. And if we survived, these stress hormones would flush out of our system within a couple of hours. Unfortunately, today they don't. And for entrepreneurs who are often involved in numbers of interactions during the course of a day that can symbolize a kind of life and death struggle, they are just awash in a river of stress hormones. Now, one of the things that most people don't understand is stress is like secondhand smoke. It's contagious. Yeah. So you get an entrepreneur come home in their family, they're impatient, they're short-tempered, there's quarreling going on. If finances are rough, we know the kind of tension that's going on. So it makes for a very difficult time. And by the way, studies show more and more that children in homes like this have some serious difficulties, health difficulties, psychological difficulties. So if an entrepreneur can begin to function from a center of gravity that's more relaxed and more responsive, it changes everything. It's a big game changer.
So that's kind of how we protect ourselves as entrepreneurs from stress, is just kind of coming back to the center of ourselves?
Yes, but we have to know what's behind the words. Many entrepreneurs go home and have 2 or 3 scotches, smoke a joint, possibly worse. Mm-hmm. And it's a way of kind of getting out of this. So we have to become accustomed to this. Think about it for a moment. If you didn't become accustomed to brushing your teeth, the last thing in the world you'd do before you go to bed tonight is put this brushy, hairy thing in your mouth and be swiggling this funny tasting stuff around, right? But you know that it's important because you want to be able to chew your food and not just gum it. Right? That's right. So you've made those connections in your mind. Well, most people say, yeah, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to listen to this. I don't have time. Well, unless you're aware of what the payoff is. But yes, entrepreneurs can develop a center of gravity that's very calm, that's self-assured, that's clear, that's focused, that is very, very capable of focusing with a laser-like focus, and that is connected to their depths. It's not a fear-based thing. Now, to come up with gargantuan effort from there is another story altogether.
Well, I've got to tell you this, Jim. Every week, we come to an hour so quickly, I cannot believe it. And we are at the top of the hour. I can tell you, from Brian and I spending time with you a couple of weeks ago on the phone, we were on the phone over an hour at a minimum. And after we got off the phone, we both talked and felt like we could have talked to you for hours and hours, because you are such a fascinating man with such an important message to share with other entrepreneurs just like Brian and I. So I just want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And we had some technical things here a week or so ago. It's been absolutely beautiful tonight. So wonderful to connect with you again. Yes. I want to thank you so much for spending your time, and I'm going to turn it back over to Brian.
And I want to first thank Kathy. I got to look this way. My camera's reversed. But thank you so much for everything you've done over the past weeks. A lot of what Dr. Jim has been saying tonight, we can resonate with. It has been happening to us. The stress factor has been through the roof. We prevailed. We made it through. We've busted through that barrier, but it's getting much better.
We still have work, though.
we can
We
complete.
still have more work to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Still more work to do, but it's much better now, and we really can connect with a lot of what you say, Jim, and we really, really appreciate you coming back on the show after the difficulties we had a couple weeks ago. Very gracious of you. It's just so folks know this is a kind and gracious gentleman who did not react in any horrible way whatsoever when we went through some fun a couple of weeks ago. We call it. We were actually laughing hysterically at one point, but I truly
It
from
was
the heart
fun,
want to
yes.
say thank you.
Well, listen, I want to thank the two of you, and I'm so grateful that you exist and that Spike Humor has connected me with the two of you.
Spike.
I'm inspired by your work. I know you come from a depth of caring and that you're looking to create some magic in your own lives and in other people's lives. And I just think it's wonderful. I'm very grateful for your inviting me on the show, and I appreciate it a great deal.
Now, Brian, how can they find Dr. Jim here?
Yeah, as you can see, let's see, he's this way now. He's right up here if you're on the internetcitadel.com or later celebritycreators.com, where he will be landing very, very soon. You just click right on his nose on that image, and that will take you to his Facebook page. You can connect with him there, add him as a friend, get to know him a little bit more, maybe connect with him, and carry this a little further. I, for one, want to know where we can find this product where you can just lay down and listen and get into that stress-free zone. Is that available, Jim, anywhere right now?
Yeah, it actually is. I tell you what, though, I think probably the best thing is anybody who's interested can just write me at Dr. Manganello at Comcast.net. I don't know if my name is spelled up on the site.
Yes.
And I can give it to you very briefly. It's DrManganIello at Comcast.net. And I'd be happy to give you very precise information about it, and we could even chat about it if you're inclined.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you
All right,
so
folks,
much.
I thank you very much.
And thank you. And Kathy, once again, thank you. You're like the glue that holds this show together. Always have been. With that, we want to respect everyone's time. It is now just past 7 o'clock. We will be back next week with another fantastic show and a great guest. Until then, we will bid you good night. Thank you all once again.
Good night,
Good night.
folks. Bye-bye.